Hello from the KUOW newsroom. This is Seattle Now. I'm Patricia Murphy with a roundup of today's top stories. It's Tuesday, July 1st. We'll start with national news. President Donald Trump's mega bill, carrying much of his domestic agenda, has passed the Senate. It now goes back to the U.S. House. Scott Greenstone reports on Washington lawmakers' reactions.
Spokane Congressman Michael Baumgartner posted on X Tuesday, pleased to see the big, beautiful bill pass the Senate. American flag emoji. Baumgartner's a Republican. His post praised the bill's, quote, robust military spending and tax cuts. His colleague in the middle of the state, Representative Dan Newhouse, will review the legislation before determining how to vote, his spokesperson said. The rest of Washington's delegation are Democrats, and Representative Susan Del Bene of Medina pointed out that the bill passed the House the first time by only one vote. Quote, it only takes one to stop this billionaire bailout. Scott Greenstone, KUOW News.
A number of healthcare providers in Washington are also sounding the alarm about the bill, which the U.S. House is considering for final passage before the July 4th holiday. Cassie Sauer is the executive director of the State Hospital Association. She says proposed cuts to Medicaid could affect all Washington hospitals.
Some of the services that we think will be cut most quickly could be things like urgent cares, primary care clinics. It's hospitals all across the state, so it could be the most urban hospitals to the smallest rural hospitals really affected by this.
Though only about a quarter of Washingtonians are on Medicaid, Sauer says hospitals rely on it. Yakima and Spokane will be particularly affected, she says, two areas represented by Republicans who supported the bill the first time it was in the House. More national news now. Washington is suing the federal government for sharing people's health information with the agency that oversees immigrant enforcement. Eilish O'Neill has more on that story.
States share information about people who receive Medicaid with the federal government. And in the past, the government has only used that information for healthcare purposes. But Washington's Attorney General says in June, the Trump administration handed off information about all Medicaid recipients to the Department of Homeland Security. That's why Washington and 14 other states are suing to block the feds from transferring any more health information and to prevent them from using the information that's already been transferred for immigration enforcement. The feds say they shared the information to make sure people aren't using programs they aren't eligible for. Nearly 2 million Washington residents are on the state's Medicaid program. Tens of thousands of them don't have legal status, and their health care is paid for by Washington state, not federal dollars. Eilish O'Neill, KUOW News.
News from the City Council now. Council President Sara Nelson says she wants to see the city take a more comprehensive approach to funding addiction treatment services. Noelle Gasca has more on Nelson's idea for a new revenue source.
Earlier this year, the Washington state legislature gave local governments the green light to increase their sales tax by 0.1% in order to fund public safety programs. While Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell hasn't announced a plan to up the city's sales tax yet, Nelson says she's going ahead with a proposal to dedicate 25% of any sales tax increase to invest in addiction treatment.
When we invest in getting people off the streets and into treatment, we prevent crime, reduce emergency room responses, and make every neighborhood safer. And that is smart public safety. That is public safety.
Nelson says she plans to introduce a formal proposal to the City Council next week. Noelle Gasca, KUOW News.
In state health news, Washington's Child Welfare Agency is seeing an alarming trend among the families it's investigated. The number of children in those families who died or nearly died tripled in the first 3 months of 2025 compared to the same period last year. Again, here's Eilish O'Neill with more on that story.
These child deaths have been rising for a few years. Critics say policy changes have kept too many children in unsafe homes, while the state blames the worsening opioid epidemic and other factors. Tana Sen is secretary of the State Child Welfare Agency.
There's a significant amount of parental stress. There's mental health. There's behavioral health. There might be drug use. There might be some corrections involvement. Whatever the issues are, we're seeing families with high needs.
More than half the incidents involved opioids, especially among children under 3. Older children were more likely to die of malnutrition. Sen says parents, including pregnant women, need quicker access to mental and behavioral health services, like treatment for substance use disorder. Eilish O'Neill, KUOW News.
Some news from the recent crash of a Boeing plane. Bloomberg News is reporting investigators are looking into whether dual engine failure caused a Boeing 787 Dreamliner to crash in India last month. The Air India flight went down in a densely populated area June 12th after the plane failed to get more than a few hundred feet off the ground following takeoff. Bloomberg says Air India pilots have been reenacting what might have happened in a flight simulator, and so far they found having the plane's landing gear deployed, like it was right before the crash, and the wing flaps retracted, probably didn't cause the crash on their own. Data shows the pilots also deployed an emergency power turbine right before the crash. Some experts are looking into whether some sort of technical failure is to blame, but none of the official agencies investigating the crash has announced a cause. If you're heading into the North Cascades for the holiday weekend, heads up. There's a campfire ban that starts this Thursday. Officials are asking visitors not to burn wood or use briquettes. Don't put any fuel into the fire pits, fire pans, or barbecue grills. You can still use pressurized liquid fuel stoves, grills, or lanterns to cook your s'mores and hot dogs, as long as there's an on-off switch for the flame. The fire ban also applies to Ross Lake and Lake Chelan National Recreation areas and any campgrounds along State Route 20. The Parks Department says a lack of spring rain and warm weather has dried out the land and raised the fire risk. Officials say if you see smoke or flames, call 911 or notify a ranger. And here's some interesting science news. Marine biologists say there's evidence that transient wild orcas might be trying to bond with people by sharing their food with them. Research published this week in the Journal of Comparative Psychology revealed on more than 30 occasions in 4 oceans over 20 years, wild orcas have tried to share their prey with people. The whales approached people and dropped freshly hunted prey in front of them, things like sea otters, green turtles, and jellyfish. The gift-giving encounters last about 30 seconds, and scientists say it appears the orcas are curious to see what happens if they offer people food. The researchers ignore the offer in most cases, but when researchers offered the food back to the orcas, they either passed it back or took the food and shared it with its relatives. Next time on Seattle Now, you may have noticed housing developments in your neighborhood where 2 homes are connected by a sky bridge.
Developers were realizing that it could really maximize the space on a lot to have what was technically a single-family home, build an attached ADU via Skybridge, and then have a third unit that's just the detached unit, and you could have this little 3-pack.
We'll learn more Wednesday morning. And that's all for today from the KUOW Newsroom in Seattle. Our producer is Vaughn Jones, and I'm Patricia Murphy. Seattle Now and KUOW are members of the NPR network. See you later.